everybody, welcome to this week's Coach's Corner. So we're going to start our third week of the program review, and we're going to talk about the Cube Method today. So who is the Cube Method by?
Cube Method was developed by Brandon Lilly.
So tell me a little bit about it.
So the Cube Method is based off from a 10-week program. It is meant to, on the 10th week, you're either going to compete or perform a mock meet to be able to reset your PR numbers or to meet them, hopefully reset them, so that you can then have a new weight to base your percentages off from.
That sounds like a pretty solid program.
In theory, yep. It's a very, very good, solid program. The program actually follows a progressive overload, and it's based off from 4 days a week, 3-week cycles. So your first week, you'd say you'd do a heavy squat day, right? You'd have a repetition effort bench day. Then you'd have an explosive workout deadlift day. The next week, you would do a heavy bench, explosive squat, repetition deadlift, right? So you're constantly transitioning between explosive, repetition, and heavy days.
So it's rotating kind of those different
It'll
aspects
rotate.
of training.
So like week 1, you'd have your heavy squat, right? Week 4, you'd have your heavy squat again.
So that doesn't sound like a bad program. What are the cons to it?
The cons are that you may not consistently have like enough heavy work in there. Okay. So you'd only hit heavy on your squat day, right? Then your bench and your deadlift would be lighter days. And then you're going to come back into it. And then the next week you'll get a heavy day.
Okay.
But then you don't actually ever hit a 1 rep max for any of your big threes until starting in the 7th, 8th, and 9th weeks prior to your competition or your event, whatever you're going to have it be. Okay. So you don't really get enough heavy work to challenge your system enough. You also don't get used to that heavier work. Like throughout the whole program, you'd say your heavy days would start at 80%, and then go up by 5% for each lift after each cycle. So every 3 weeks, you'd go from 80% to 85%, and then that third and final wave that you do is going to go 90, 92.5, 95, and then 97 or 100%.
Okay, so it sounds like this might be a good program if you have a long training cycle before your next.
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
So it's good to get you progressive overloads, progressive periodization, I should say. So you'd get used to going through all the different rates. You'd learn how to work the different maximum effort-ish type lifts. You'd learn all the different explosive methods that you'd want to do, and then your repetition work, right? The only issue is that it does not have enough behind it per se. So if you know you're going to be competing in powerlifting, you want to be able to at least hit a max effort work, get used to grinding it. You don't hit those max numbers until like every 9 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be an issue for some of the more experienced lifters.
Yes.
And new lifters, maybe.
Yep. But the good thing is about the system itself is for the beginning lifters, they're probably going to get too much of a recovery time, right? But the more experienced lifters, they would get a lot of extra recovery time. Also good for older lifters. So, you're never going to be pushed beyond your max up until roughly, a month out from your competition or until you're about to set your new PRs.
Oh, wow. Okay. So to me, when I think of the Cube Method, at least based on what we've learned, is that this would be a good program for those starting out, like beginners, and the experienced lifters whose maybe their bodies have gotten run down by the other training programs they've been using and need a little bit of a break. They're already used to grinding through lifts at meets and know they have that capability.
Yep. So this method specifically we used prior to the conjugate method for our personal training and for a number of other people. What it did is it made us bigger and stronger, but it did not give us that full end strength because we were not used to handling 90% plus each week in at least one of the big 3 movements.
And I did notice that in my competition, thinking back now, I did have a harder time with confidence struggling with the weights and knowing that I could get it if I ground it out a little more. So, okay, so I can see how this would be beneficial if you kind of rotate it in with other programs.
Yep, it would not be a bad idea to put into a rotation if you want your powerlifting centric type of movements and your powerlifting centric programming, but you also want to kind of take a break and just kind of ease back into it. So after a competition, it'd be a good way to get back into it. Okay,
awesome. Well, is there anything else you want us to know?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next week for the final video in this video series. So thank you guys for joining with us.
Subscribe and like.
Thanks.